Okay, here is my Lee Pro 6000, also known as 6-pack. It has the standard Lee case feeder, and I 3D printed the funnel at the top. It has a bullet feeder that I 3D printed. Currently it's set up to load 200 grain plated 45 ACP, and I'm loading with 5.2 grains of zip. There have been several modifications to the press. Number one, they like to bend the spring for the primer feeder and the case feeder. So what I did was I inserted a piece of steel coat hanger at the top of the spring. You really can't see it there. And then there's a Bic pen that I took the inside out and I put that over top of the spring. And when the lever is actuated, it actually slides all the way to the top to prevent the spring from trying to crimp where it normally does. Another thing that I did, because they notoriously either push the primer feeder too far back or not far enough, is I cut the primer actuator spring and I took a 632 screw. I removed about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch from the old spring and then screwed the screw into both ends of it. This way I can adjust it to the exact length I need, and it seems to work perfectly. I did the same thing, except I did not cut the spring and add a screw to the case feeder spring, because that seems to be fine and it's not as critical as the primer feed spring, which causes issues. Another thing that I did, I replaced the original Lee primer chute, for lack of a better term, with one that I 3D printed, and the files for that are easily available if you have a 3D printer. I also installed a proximity sensor on the primer chute, so when I get down to the last 10 or 12 primers, it illuminates a light that's up on my bullet feeder to indicate to me that I'm running low on primers and it needs to be refilled. So here I'm going to load a couple of 45 ACPs. As I said, 200 grain plated bullets using the Lee primer feeder and the Lee bullet feeder with the, well, I should say Lee bullet die with the bullet feeder that I printed on my 3D printer. So let's see if we can load some 45 ACP. It's a little difficult because I'm out of position to actually actuate the press because I have the camera in the way, but I'll do the best I can. I find that a slow, steady pace seems to work the best. There's no need to rush. Even at a steady pace, you can do about 450 to 500 an hour, and that's not working hard at it. The press, once you get it tuned in, works very well. The issue is getting it tuned in. They can be very finicky. I will not be moving the camera for this part of the operation, but you can clearly see that it is having no problem consistently loading the cartridges. As I said, one of the key things that made this so reliable was cutting that primer feed spring taking a little bit off of it. Now I cut it in the center. You don't want to cut the ends of it off. And that allowed me to insert that 632 screw, which I cut the head off so I could insert it into both sides. And now I can adjust that spring to the exact length I need so that the primer falls perfectly in the primer hole and it doesn't overextend or underextend. One of the biggest issues with these presses are they don't like to fully index, or they skip indexing sometimes. And I found that that is due to the fact that if that lower clutch there, you can hear the bullets dropping from the bullet feeder. I forgot to turn on the bullet feeder when I did the started the video. And the other thing you can hear is I made a DIY powder check. So you hear that little beep that assures me that I have a full powder charge in the case every time I actuate the handle. And you will now hear the bullet feeder start every once in a while as I am loading the cartridges. So getting back to the part where the clutch is, if that clutch doesn't fit snugly on the shaft that goes down the middle of the press, it will fail to index correctly some of the time. Make sure that's a good snug fit, and if not, if you have indexing problems, replace that clutch. Here we have a case that did not feed completely. So we've probably loaded 30 or more rounds in this little short video. The case feeder holds around 90 .45 caliber cases and a little bit over 105 9mm cases. So if anybody has any comments or recommendations, leave them at the bottom of this video and I'll review it and answer any questions if I can. I appreciate you taking the time to look at it, and you have yourself a wonderful day.